Hi guys, welcome to another video. So in today's video, I'm gonna show you the vlog, like the build vlog of how I assembled roughly 560 Sing dollars worth in low-end gaming build, low-end gaming PC. So these are the parts which is not exactly the same parts I use in my build, but these are the equivalent parts of what I would actually price them if I were to buy them like brand new plus used. So most of the parts here can be bought brand new from Aliexpress, which I will show you here. For example, this is an example of a white PC build. That means if you know like the white build and all that, it looks more premium. Personally, I like white builds a lot, especially if it's on the lower end. Let's start out with the B450 motherboard. So in AliExpress, if you go here, let's search for AliExpress B450 motherboards. Okay, B450 motherboard, we have this. So this is from Machinist. So the Machinist motherboard at B450 motherboard is the lowest price B450 motherboard I can find, even on AliExpress. So that costs a mere $65.39. Here I priced it a bit higher, $67.57. It's because somehow it doesn't add in, I think, the delivery charges or tax. I believe it's the delivery charges. So if you were to add it to cart with delivery charges and everything, it should amount to $67.57. So these are inclusive with delivery charges. I have a white 16GB DDR4 RAM, so I believe it's here. This is from Killy3, so also from AliExpress. So here it priced at $34.52, but with delivery charges is $36.56. A white CPU cooler, so something like this. This is a pretty nice from Upsiren, Warriors Assassin. Basically, it is the same. I think it's the same cooler as the Thermalright Assassins, but they attach like a temperature monitor on top of it. Okay, so maybe do I have Epic Pen? No, I don't have Epic Pen here. Yeah, so they actually attach like a temperature monitor on top of it. So a temperature probe here, which looks really nice. So it gives it a more premium feel, even though it's super cheap. So this cooler with delivery charges is $29.33. 26,000 or 2600 Ryzen CPU. So you can also get this from AliExpress. Let me Google 2600 CPU. So you want to get it from a reputable seller, so probably somewhere like this from SGD CPU store, because they are like 800 plus sold and the reviews are because I haven't logged in, but you should be able to see the reviews once you log in. So this should be a pretty reputable seller because it sold 800 plus of it. So that with if you add in delivery charges and everything, it actually amounts to a bit more, which is $54.14. So the 2600 is 2600 CPU specs. I mean, the 3600 CPU is better, but it is actually a lot more expensive. The 2600 is 6-core 12-thread 65-watt TDP CPU, boosts up to 3.9 gigahertz, and it is, I believe, on Gen 3 if I am not wrong. GDR4, yeah, PCI Express Gen 3, 16 lanes. So the motherboard that we're using, the AM4, the B450 motherboard, is also on Gen 3. So the 2600 is like the 6-core CPU that is on Gen 3. If you upgrade to the 3600, you do get Gen 4, but the price-wise will be a lot more expensive. So let's look at Tech Power Up's database. Yep, so PCI Express, you can get Gen 4, but if you go into here and you Google for 3600 GPU, 3600 CPU, and if you look at reputable sellers, CPU top store, I believe around here. So there is a lot more expensive, which is about, if you add in delivery charges and that, is almost like $100. So it is almost at double the price, or at least about 80% more for essentially, I mean, a little bit uplift in performance. I believe the performance wise, L3 cache between 2600 and the 3600 has double the L3 cache, 32 megabyte compared with 16 megabyte of the 2600. So the faster L3 cache would give you higher FPS, but this is a trade-off that you will have to measure, because if you add this to the budget, this would blow past 600 Sing dollars, right? If you were to buy the 3600 CPU. So in this case, I opted for the 2600 CPU. So most of my, because the motherboard and everything is Gen 3, and our NVMe is also Gen 3 as well. And with the GPU, we opted for the 1660 Super. So in my original build vlog, I opted for the Vega 56 because I have a few of them lying around I bought for cheap. But I had issues with the Vega 56. Okay, let's go to Carousell. Because I have issues with the Vega 56 whereby the display was glitching out. Don't know whether is it driver issues or whether is it part of the GPU, because I had several Vega 56. So I swapped between a few of the Vega 56s, and I keep encountering the same issues whereby after in the middle of the benchmark, like the CPU, the PC will shut down or something like that. So I couldn't figure out what was it, and I just ditched. I stopped trying to use the Vega 56s and just opted for 1660 Super, which I had 3 of them lying around, and they were very stable. And they were able to survive through benchmarks. They could survive through hours of gaming sessions. So 1660 Super is my go-to for a cheap budget system. You can get them for, I mean, there's one listing for $100. I think this is a good buy, but I would say another one for 110. So a good price will be 100, 120, but I can see a few at 130. So even if you know if these sell out, or if the sellers are not responsive, you can't get any of these, I would say by about 130 you should be able to get a used 1660 Super. So this is the only, I would say, the only used part that we have. The rest of them are technically brand new, because so-called the B450 motherboard, the RAM, the 2600 CPU, generally those are refurbished parts sold on Aliexpress, but they probably have gone through testing. Most of them should be fine. Actually on Aliexpress you do have a return policy as well, so if it fails, I mean, it's not too big of a loss, right? $54 if the CPU fails, but most of the time, if it fails, you can message them through the AliExpress app, and I think they would like send a replacement, because it is quite cheap for them to actually send another one, right, to make the customer satisfied. So there is the GPU settled. So for PSU, I opted for the 650 watt. It's more than enough for this build. You can actually get PSUs from the cheapest one that I can find is right here from Dynacore. So this is a shop in Simlim. Then you can get a Thermalright 650 watt PSU for $65, but I opted for the Silverstone one, because Silverstone is just a little bit more reputable in terms of producing power supplies. So this, I didn't check the power supply tier rating, because at this low end of a build, since I'm trying to save so much and on cutting corners and saving money, so I didn't really check about tier list. As long as it works and you can support my low end build, it should be fine. So $65 for the PSU. For the case, I opted for a little bit of a pricier case. This is the Techwear Timber case. So in my build vlog here, you will see me using the black one, but you can actually, if you're going for all white build as the parts I've listed here, you can go for the white one. So it's a pretty nice case. It's an ATX case, so even if you have an ATX motherboard, everything can fit nicely. As you can see in the build vlog, it's very easy to cable manage. I like this case a lot. Of course, there are cheaper Techwear cases, because if you search for like cases like here, you can have one about at $60, right, which is about $10, about $17 off. And there are also cheaper cases. I think the Techwear Nexus Air is one of the cheapest one that I can see on Lazada. For cases, if you are not buying from Singapore, try and buy from local sellers, because the shipping fee is a lot less by local sellers, because it's shipped locally, and you can get it a lot faster. If it's if you're buying from overseas sellers, let's say on Amazon and on like Newegg, for example, shipped from the US, the shipping fees are going to be a lot higher because of they're shipping a very heavy item across such a long way, and if you compare the prices, it's not necessarily more cheaper. Actually, I find that the prices on Lazada are actually some of the cheapest for PC cases. Then obviously you can actually go to a shop personally, like you can go down to shops like Simlim and then just buy them and then just take a taxi home or take a Grab home, but you have to factor in your Grab fees and all that. Otherwise, if you're strong, you can just take the MRT home as well. And you can actually buy the cases from the shops itself. So some of the cases are listed here, but it's not necessarily that much cheaper. So I don't mind buying the cases from Lazada. Okay, there's that. So cable extensions, pair of white cable extensions, you can also get them from Lazada. I believe if you were to search for PC cable extensions. So a pair of white ones should cost around 20. Not this. PC white power supply. PSU cable extensions. Yeah, something like this. This is from China. I bought ones from Singapore. China. Yeah, well, all overseas. But I can't find it right now. But you should be able to find some from local shops which are selling for about $23, right? So $23 for a full set of white cable extensions. And then for the NVMe, I opted for Amazon. I think it's here. So you can buy this Gen 3 NVMe SSD 1TB. So the Kingston 1000G. For about $76. So this is from Amazon Prime. So Amazon Prime is good because all the delivery charges and taxes are all factored in when they quote us the price on the website. So the price you see here is exactly the price that you pay for. No other like delivery charges or other things that you have to factor in. So because all our CPU, our motherboard, everything is at Gen 3 speed. So buying a Gen 4 NVMe SSD, even though it's only slightly more expensive, I would say a Gen 4 NVMe SSD is about $100, so $30 more, much higher speeds, but you won't get the benefit of the higher speeds on Gen 3 hardware like this. So $76 for Gen 3 1TB NVMe SSD. I believe 1TB should be the minimum you should go for in 2024 going into 2025 because the games are simply huge nowadays. Like just a simple install of Valorant, I think takes about 60 to almost 80 gigs of space. Then if you install games like Marvel Rivals, it's another 60 to 80 gig. Then you install like Helldivers, it's another 80 gig and all that. So if you're going for like 500 gigabyte 512 gigabyte NVMe SSD, it is simply not enough for gaming going into 2025. So I believe a 1TB Gen 3 NVMe SSD should be the minimum, and it's not too much of a price difference. If you are going for like 512, if I go for like 512 gigabyte 512 gigabyte NVMe SSD, if you look at the prices, it's also around like $60, like 54, 52. So just by paying for about $30 more, you get another like 500 gigabyte worth of storage, and this storage is gonna be a lot more convenient for you. You don't have to delete games as often. You can keep more games in your NVMe SSD. So it's just for $30 more, you get huge quality of life improvement. So if you add everything total up, it should amount to about 558, so about 560 Sing dollars. Okay, so those are parts out of the way. I'll go through the build vlogs now. So this is the assembly. So I do have a few videos. Okay, so first, this is the Techwear Timber case. This is the one in black. This is with the back panel and the front tempered glass opened up. You can see that it's a lot of open space. There's 3 intake fans, black intake fans in the front, 1 black intake fan in the back. Note that this is a non-ARGB case, so this is for people who do not really like ARGB. They want to have a very classy all black or all white kind of build. Then yeah, this is really good. So a lot of cable cutouts. So there are no rubber grommets, but it is still the workmanship on this is still pretty good. And yeah, it's something that I like. So next up, This is the build vlog. So first and foremost, I actually assembled the CPU and I assembled the CPU into the, oh wait, did I put in, oh yeah, so I put in the motherboard first. I thought usually I would put it outside and then I put in my CPU. So in this build vlog, I actually put in my old 1300 CPU here, which is the one that is like almost fully rusted IHS. You can know, I will link a previous video. You can see me trying to test it out, and spoilers, it does work. But in the end, when I encountered some instabilities and so on, I actually swapped to the 1600. So yeah, I opted for the 1600 CPU, which is also another 6-core CPU there. So make sure the CPU is well seated in, then lock in the locking arm. For new builders, the guide is that if your I/O shoe is facing this side, so the I/O shoe is facing down, right, towards the bottom of the screen, the Ryzen logo should be upright to you as well. So that means you should see the Ryzen words here. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. So installing the RAM, in this case, because this is an all black build, so I put in my black, I believe this is 16 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance, but it is of not as quick a speed. I believe it is 2400 because it's quite old RAM, but it works fine. It's been with me for I think like 6 to 7 years. So most of this build is me using the parts that I have lying around, like old parts. So this is a Aorus B450 motherboard, one of my old mining motherboards that I repurposed for this low-end build. Okay. Then what else do I have? My CMOS battery is new. I swapped it out for a new one. It cost only about 50 cents. So I put in this is the back plate, and we'll try to install the cooler, how should I say, the cooler bracket. So the CPU cooler I'm using is the old Cyfuma 2 CPU tower cooler, but most of them will have brackets like these. So I put in the backplate first and then put in some of the screws so that the backplate is secure and doesn't drop while I try and mount my motherboard into the case. Okay, so screw in. Then I try and see whether my CPU cooler fits. So this is the Cyfuma 2 tower cooler. Very nice and quiet cooler. But of course, it is a bit expensive back in its time. I think I spent about $50 for it. Now from Aliexpress, you can get a lot of like single fan coolers at about below $30, right? As I listed earlier. Yeah, around $30. So it's white and then it has a temperature display. So some pretty good deals from Aliexpress. Here, I believe I should be applying thermal paste. No, I screw on the brackets. Then let me fast forward a bit. So what else did I do here? Set it up. Did I install the power supply? Okay. Wait. Yeah, I think I did. Did my video cut it out? Okay, so I flipped the case over. Yep, install my power supply. So the power supply I'm using here is the Thermaltake Smart 600 watts. I did order it from Amazon when there was on Amazon Prime Day. But it still cost me about 50 Sing dollars, or like close to 60 Sing dollars. So actually I believe paying $65 for the one from like Dynacore is actually a better choice, since you can get it a lot faster and it is 50 watts more. Then if there's any issues with the power supply, at least there's a local warranty, you can return it for another set. Right, so this is a non-modular power supply, so there's a mess of cables there. Right, so I did my best to untie the cable ties and then sort out which are the ones that I need and to keep the rest that I don't. So did a little bit of cable management here. Camera angle is not the best, unfortunately. My apologies for that, because I wasn't micromanaging the camera. The camera is at the side of the table here. So power supply, cable management. Let me fast forward a little bit. Okay. Nothing interesting here. Screws. So I was trying to figure out what screws for the motherboard. And let's go on to my second video. Okay. So figure out the screws, trying to find the screws from the power supply. So here I screwed the power supply in. Okay, and I've already put through the necessary cables that I need. So some of the cables are from the front I/O, like this is for the front I/O USB. Oh, I actually took out the motherboard again. So I haven't screwed in the motherboard. So I took out the motherboard again to get the cables sorted out. So I put out the cables. Now I mount my motherboard with the CPU and RAM installed back into the case. Oh, now I remember, because I took it out because there was an issue trying to get the power supply cables through the motherboard. Because with the CPU tower cooler in, especially the top part, so here in this top corner, this power cable couldn't go through. So I had to remove the motherboard in order to feed this power cable through. So installing the power supply first, it's still the recommended way to go. So installing the power supply, making the cables, run the cables through the back of the case first, and then putting in the motherboard should be better, because in many cases, once the motherboard is in, especially with the huge tower cooler, sometimes some of these holes where you feed the cables through become very inaccessible. Certain cases, in certain situations, you can still squeeze through the power cables, but it is difficult. So it's easier when the case is empty. So put in the power supply first, then feed the necessary cables through, and then put in your motherboard. Okay, what I'm doing here? Oh, I'm still doing cable routing. So here I am still trying to figure out which front I/O panel cables I want to route through the bottom of the case. So this is the bottom of the case where the power supply is here, and then there's cutouts here for us to fit the cables through, so you don't see a lot of them dangling in the front of the case. Make the build look cleaner. Right, finally I have my motherboard in, plugged in this is the EPS power, CPU EPS power. I should plug in the 24. Lighting isn't the best, so I'm using a torch to see where the screws match up. Yeah, so now I'm finally screwing in the motherboard. So using my electronic screwdriver. So I think the motherboard should be secure here. Motherboard secure, right? And then figuring out which front I/O cables to plug where. I believe this B450 motherboard doesn't have support for USB-C. So the USB-C cable is not utilized, but it has audio. So it has front panel audio. So I'm fitting in the front panel audio here. It does have support for RGB, but good thing is this case doesn't have requirements for RGB. That is the front panel, I think USB, and then there's the front panel like switches, power switch and LEDs. Okay, we'll fast forward through this. So here, I believe I'm installing the SSD. No, okay, testing it out. Yeah, because my motherboard is it's a used motherboard, so it's been sitting on my mining rack for quite a while. I forgot whether it's been sitting in a mining rack or sitting on a rack. So I just found that it's a little bit dusty, so I was testing it out. What else? Let me skip through the boring parts. Okay, so now I believe I should be installing the GPU. So motherboard is in. Took out two of the back plate, kind of like covers. So the 1660 Super I'm using is a 2-slot GPU. I haven't installed the CPU cooler yet. So I think I'm just taking out the plates in advance in preparation for installing the GPU later. Okay, so most of the cables are already in here. So my 24 pin power, CPU power is in, EPS cable is in, and that should then all the front panel like the front I/O cables are in, so there is no hard disk, so SATA cables are not required, and no 2.5-inch SSD, so SATA cables not required, which is good. I haven't installed the NVMe yet. Okay, so now I'm applying thermal paste to my CPU. Seems like I'm preparing to install the CPU tower cooler. Yep, and then install the tower cooler. This Sifomer 2 cooler is actually a pretty big pain to install. And I've tried it. I believe in like certain cases like this. How should I say it? It is a pain to install because the metal clips for this fan is very stiff. So I can't really remove this fan. Like when I'm in such a narrow, like when I don't have a lot of finger space, I can't remove the fan because the clips are so stiff. For the more modern, I believe the Peerless Assassin, Thermalright Peerless Assassin, it also has similar design, where in order to screw in the tower cooler, you will need to remove the center fan. But for the Peerless Assassin, the metal clips are a lot softer, it's a lot easier to remove. So even in a cramped case like this, I was actually able to remove the central fan, screw in the tower cooler, and then install the central fan later. So it's a lot easier to manage to install. So in this old one, you can see that since I can't remove the center fan, it has two cutouts here for me to try and aim my screwdriver to the bottom, like fastening screws. There are two screws that fasten the CPU tower cooler to the brackets, and it's really hard to see, so I had to use a torch and then to aim my long screwdriver. By the way, this long screwdriver is provided by when I bought the CPU tower cooler, which is a nice touch because it is absolutely required. Without this long screwdriver, I wouldn't have known how I could have installed this tower cooler for all my pre-existing builds. So it's absolutely necessary. So it's good that they include it, but the design could have been better, which now most of the modern CPU coolers have more updated designs. It is a lot easier to install. I think here I was trying to see whether I could remove the fan, and I couldn't. Like, I tried really hard, and I finally gave up. Then I just continued with trying to find my way to screw in the tower cooler. So you can see like half of this video, half of this vlog is me trying to screw in this tower cooler. I think tower cooler is finally in, and then I put in the GPU. In this vlog, this GPU here is the Gigabyte Vega 56. I think a two fan cooler, which does work. It boots, but it gave me a lot of stability issues. So in the end, I swapped it out with a 1660 Super. Okay, then that is, I think, the completed build. So here I just slotted in everything. Did I show a boot test? Let me fast forward a bit. Okay, so I propped it up, plugged everything in. Okay, then powered it on. So there's the power button. Okay, you can see the case fan spin. There's light, and then the CPU cooler fans spin. So it's an all blackout build. Personally, I really like it. I think it's very clean. I have listed it for sale, but this build isn't getting a lot of traction because I priced it on Carousell for about 500 SGD, but I don't have a lot of buyers for it because on Carousell it's really competitive now. There are a lot of like really cheap builds, which are like cheaper and better spec'd than mine priced at 500. So yeah, it's pretty competitive. So that's the completed build. It works. I believe I did show a boot screen, right? Did I show it earlier? Where was it? I think I showed the boot screen. Yep, so here. So the system did boot. Was it here? Yep. So system did boot. Okay. So it is working. And yep, so this is the completed build, and I have more videos of the completed build because eventually I did swap out so in this part is I think the build boots, and then I was doing cable management. So cable management is annoying but necessary, especially for cases like this whereby It's a traditional ATX case, so there's very limited space for cables at the back. It's not like the fish tank style case where you have a lot of space to stuff in your cables. So with this kind of traditional like straight airflow, like where the air blows through this way, straight through airflow ATX cases, cable management is very necessary. So what I did for cable management is that I make sure there's not too much cable showing on the front of the case, so most of the case is at the back. Then what you want to do is you try to route and tie the cables to the sides. Like these cables here, you want to tie it to the center, and then this IO cables here, you want to use cable ties and fasten them to the side. So most cases, such as this TechWare case here, will provide some sort of like certain grooves for you to thread through your cable ties, and to make cable management a lot easier, right? So you can fasten them to the case. So I'll just fast forward them a little bit. So I'll skip through so I fasten it, so you can see it's a lot better. So this is after I've tied the cables to the case, and this is, where's the before? So this is before, right? So before it is such a mess, but this is the after I've actually attached and secured it to the edge of the case. Then the center ones, did I do cable management for the center ones? Yep, so this one I'm trying to attach the IO input output cables to the bottom of the case, make them a bit neater. Center ones, yeah, so I'm doing it here, try to bundle them up, and then I tie it to the center of the case. The excess cables, right? So I pull out the slack and then I feed them into the power supply like cavity here. Then I try to like press down the center cables, make them as compact as possible so that the side panel can close. Because if you don't do a good job on cable, you don't do a decent job at cable managing this, then the cables will be like protruding out and you won't be able to close the back panel case, the side panel case here. So cable management is absolutely necessary. I need to do at least a decent job of it. I don't think I'm really good at cable management, but I think I did a pretty decent job with this TechWare timber case. So here I try to have cable ties and secure the cables to, like these are the fan cables, to the top of the case. Yeah, I think that is somewhat secured. I think I didn't show this part. This part I secured the cables to the back of the case, the back edge of the case. Did I show? Do I have it in video? Or maybe I didn't have it in this video. But basically here, I have cable ties that tie the cable to the back of the case right here, so that this cable doesn't go dangling. So this is the EPS power cable. EPS power cable from the power supply, it goes up. So I cable tied it to the back of the case, and then it goes through this opening here, and then it attaches to the EPS power socket on the motherboard. Okay, so cable management done. And then here I try to close the side panel, which I believe it is successful. So the TechWare timber case comes in like a toolless design, like there's screwless design, sorry. So there's screwless, so it's pretty good. So you can just slide in, then you can just push. There's like fastening pegs on the top, so side panel closes well and with no issues. Then this is the completed build, finished with the cable management. Yep, so looking pretty clean in my personal opinion. So it's all black, very minimal RGB, and I think I have a B-roll. Yeah, so this one is fully completed B-roll. It's a little bit lower resolution. I think this is slightly better. Let me mute it. Yep, so this is with the 1660 Super. So this is with the red cable extensions that I purchased later. So I swapped out red cable extensions, which actually took me a fair bit of effort. I had to remove the motherboard just to fit the cable extensions because the EPS power cable extension couldn't fit through, right? So I fitted in red cable extensions. The PC is currently running, so the fans are spinning. So you can see that there is a little bit of RGB that's from the motherboard. I can't disable the RGB unless maybe I download the Gigabyte RGB software. I can disable it that way. So otherwise, I think this is a pretty clean looking build. Almost pure blackout build, minimal RGB. This is the Asus TUF Gaming 1660 Super. And yeah, so that's about it. So that is the build for about, you can get a pretty equivalent build. Here I priced the all white build. This is the all white build for about 560 Sing dollars. So that is the build, but how does it perform? So I've also done benchmarks of it. Let me check. Do I have the benchmarks here? Okay, so benchmarks. So this is the list of benchmarks that I ran using, I believe, MSI Afterburner. Yep. So I've run a few of the popular games and some modern games as well, like Valorant is here, Dota 2, like can you play Apex, can you play Baldur's Gate 3, can it play Marvel Rivals, Path of Exile 2, this is Path of Exile 2, not 1, and can you play Palworld. So I have Helldivers 2 benchmark as well. Okay, so let's see some of the videos. I believe I do have some recordings. First one would be Path of Exile. Did I record? Oh no, I didn't record Path of Exile. Okay, too bad. So Path of Exile, unfortunately I didn't have the recording. It ran, I believe, I forgot what was the preset that I ran, because Path of Exile actually does have some weird settings. There's a lot of settings you can customize with it, FSR and all that. But I believe I try to disable FSR, and probably I went with a low to medium preset. It could almost run 60 FPS. So I would say it is still playable because it is mostly single player game. It doesn't require a lot of Twitch reaction and all that. So for this 600, like sub 600 Sing dollar gaming PC, cheap game, low end gaming PC, you can still play Path of Exile 200, no problems. Then for Valorant, do I have a video of Valorant? Okay, so I have a recording of the game running Valorant on the PC. Yep, so you can see that Valorant runs. This is in the training range. Well, Valorant is running, I believe, what's the preset that I ran here? High preset. So I actually tried high and low preset for Valorant, and the average frame rates were about the same. The low preset averaged at 268 FPS, while the high preset averaged at 260 FPS. So Valorant runs very smoothly, I would say, even if you are running on a like 1080p. Oh, I forgot to mention that all these benchmarks will run in 1080p. Right, so obviously for such a low-end build, I don't expect to run games in 1440p, and it wouldn't make sense because a 1440p monitor would cost easily like 300 plus Sing dollars. That will be half the cost of your entire PC build. So I think like a high refresh rate 1080p monitor, like probably a 240 Hz or 165 Hertz 1080p monitor should cost about 200 Sing dollars, or like 150, about 200 Sing dollars. So that will be a more sensible monitor to use, because yeah, you don't really want to run for games at 1440p with such a low end build. So the game runs fine. Yep. So so I'm testing out different settings, so it can run fine in the settings range. So that is Valorant, runs no problems. At 1080p high preset. Next one we have Dota 2. So Dota 2, I was running it at the highest settings, right? So I believe this is I think a live replay. I was watching, like I was going through the friends list and looking through a friend's game so that I can record the game without actually playing it. So it was running about 100 FPS, 94 FPS average. Let's see. Yeah, so this is best looking preset. So in Dota 2, you don't have high, low, medium. You have like best running, and then you have best looking. So best looking is its highest preset, or its ultra preset, so to say. personally, I know, I mean, some people like the best looking preset. Some people like the lowest preset because it's like best running preset because it's easier to identify the shapes and easier to not misclick on enemies. So this is, but anyway, this is the best looking preset at 1080p, and this is running at about 100 FPS, so 99.2 for average. Even the low 0.1 is about 26. It's perfectly fine, so it's running very smoothly, so no problems playing Dota 2, because Dota 2 is not a demanding game. Next one, we have Apex. So can it play Apex then? Apex, do I have a recording of Apex? Okay, for Apex, let's see. Yep, so this is at 1080p. What was the settings that I used here? For Apex, I did medium, so I didn't run it at the highest. So you can see me go through the settings here. Yeah, so I do not, because we don't have as much VRAM. The GPU, 1660 Super GPU only has 6GB of VRAM. So I actually just went through medium presets, medium to low actually, because if you were to select a lot of higher texture streaming budgets, we will have run out of VRAM. So I ensured that most of this is medium to low. So I would say this is mostly medium preset. The game is running at, what's my Apex FPS? Oh, similar to Dota 2. So about 99, average about 99 to 100 FPS. So this is in the practice range. So you can see that it runs pretty smooth. I would say it's very playable, even for competitive reasons. But obviously, if you want the highest frame rate, I mean, the maximum you can hit in Apex Legends, I think, is 300 FPS. So if you want like 300 FPS and 1080p, you will need a much better CPU and GPU, which would probably cost you in the like 1500 SGD, probably around that range. So for such a low-end build, this is below 600 SGD to be able to play Apex at around 100 FPS. No, I think it's pretty reasonable, so you can actually play Apex pretty well. Yep. So let's forward through the video. Yep, no issues there. Oh, okay, I have volume. Yep, to show that the volume works. So that's Apex. Next will be, can it run Baldur's Gate? So Baldur's Gate 3 is actually a lot more demanding. It is a modern game. And what's my settings here? Baldur's Gate 3. I was running at roughly medium presets. So around medium presets, and this is the starting area. Around here, sort of running borderless windowed for some reason. Okay, I didn't go through all the settings here. So this is just a starting area because I just started in the game. I actually wasn't that interested to play the game, but it was a very popular like benchmark game for single player because it is very highly rated on the Steam all-time playing charts. Or yeah, actually, honestly, it sold very well, and there's still a lot of people playing Baldur's Gate. When I look at like the Steam, like the top 100 games currently being played on Steam, so Baldur's Gate 3 is still among them. So it's a very popular game, and you can see that the game actually averages about 56 FPS most of the time. So here in my benchmark, I average about 57 FPS. So still below that ideal 60 FPS target, but I would say it's very playable. So you can see it's mostly smooth. Baldur's Gate 3 is a single player game, so you don't need extremely high frame rates to be able to play this, but at least it's not a slideshow. So at medium preset, Baldur's Gate 3 is very playable, should be no problems. Still looking pretty good at medium preset. Next up, Marvel Rivals. But can it play Marvel? So let's see. So I load up Marvel Rivals, and this is just the testing range. What presets did I use? Let me check. Marvel Rivals, I did medium and low. Okay, so this is Marvel Rivals at 1080p. In medium, because Marvel Rivals is an Unreal Engine 5 game, you can see Lumen GI is even enabled even in medium. So it is pretty demanding. So Marvel Rivals is a pretty demanding game. So can such a low-end system play Marvel, which is one of the latest like hero shooter games to be released from Tencent, I believe. Okay, so here I choose Storm and I just test the game out in the training range. I was averaging about 47 FPS. So 47.4 FPS, just lower the sound a bit. 47.4 FPS on the medium preset. So for a multiplayer game, this is not ideal, right? Especially this is an FPS game. We want as much FPS as possible. So I think I did try it out in the low preset. So this, I believe, is in the low preset. So at low preset, we could at least cross 60 FPS. So my benchmark showed that I could average about 66.8 FPS on, this is just the testing practice range. So hopefully this FPS will translate to actual gameplay. So obviously in actual gameplay with different effects and so on, your FPS can actually differ. But I would say at low settings at 60 FPS, it is a lot more playable. So with such a low-end CPU, you can actually play Marvel Rivals, right? Which is the latest free-to-play hero shooter. Very popular. Most people on Twitch are streaming it. Okay, next up, we have Power. So one of my personal favorite games to play. I have quite a few hours in this. Single-player game Power. Power is also in Unreal Engine 5, so it is also a pretty demanding game. What games did I benchmark Power in? Power, I benchmark in high and low. No, I have medium, high, and low. So I believe first I ran Power on medium, and I was averaging about 70 FPS. So here you can see me trying to teleport to a different location other than my base. So as is loading, it is a little bit laggy. And here it's about 77, so 100 FPS because there's less pals, right? So when it's in my base or when during combat, so this is during combat. Oh, the FPS actually has a stutter there. So there are some dips during combat. But most of the time you can still average about 70 FPS in the medium preset. I think I checked high as well as low preset to see if there's any difference. So even on the high preset, I was this is still in combat. Yeah, trying to catch Lavenders. This I was trying to catch Suzaku. No, Lavender still. So in this desert area, the FPS is a bit higher at 90 plus because there are less pals. So probably the CPU is not as badly loaded. It is. The desert place is a little bit more empty. So in my base, you can see the FPS like drops to 60 plus. I forgot which exact preset is this. I assume this video is recorded in a medium preset. But going back to my benchmark results at high, we dip below 60 FPS on average. We go to 55. So at low, we actually average about 76. So I would say the sweet spot setting for Power will probably be medium on this low-end system. Because at medium, we can average above 60 FPS, so we still get a 60 FPS gaming experience. And we don't really lose out on too much. Okay, so that is Power. Next up, Helldivers, also another very popular multiplayer game. Not really single player, so this is multiplayer, third person FPS. So let's see. So this is recorded gameplay. My average for Helldivers 2, I actually benchmark it in medium because, like I mentioned, the GPU has only 6 gigabytes of VRAM, so I didn't really want to go on the higher settings as you will run out of VRAM. So I think I averaged about 59 FPS. Did I actually have gameplay? Yep. So this is actually... Oh yeah, so... this video is a pretty good representation. So in this case, when the game is... When you're loading into a map, right? You can see that my CPU really struggles. So the CPU I'm using here is a 1600. Ryzen 1600 is not the 2600. But this older 6-core CPU really struggles during the load test. I don't think it is the SSD's fault, because actually for testing I'm using a Gen 4 2TB NVMe SSD from I believe 11, but I'm limited to Gen 3 speeds because of the B450 motherboard and my 1600 CPU. So you can see that, yeah, it's basically a slideshow. Like the 0.1 and 1% FPS drops to 1 during the loading phase, so that is the lowest. But eventually, once it loads through, the gameplay is decent. So this was recorded during when we had the Illuminate invasion phase. What's my average FPS here? Okay, when I was doing this benchmark, 59 FPS is if I am in the ship itself. So when I was running around the ship, it was around 59 FPS, because somehow I didn't have this benchmark score recorded. But I think this is more accurate, because this is actual combat where you have a ton of enemies running around, and it's averaging around 45 FPS. So I'm gonna forward it a little bit more. But most of the time you can see on the recording, like at 1080p, this should be medium preset. Yeah, medium preset. It is still mostly playable. Yeah, it is still playable. I'm supposed to reinforce my teammate here. Yep. Okay, reinforce. So forward a little bit more. Yeah, the Illuminates are pretty brutal actually, because they keep swarming us left and right. Like a zombies kind of map. So actually running around completing the objectives is more important than trying to kill every single Illuminate, because you just can't kill them all. We run out of ammo so quickly on the Illuminate maps. So you can see Helldivers 2 averaging around 40 FPS, still pretty playable. But you can see that as I scroll my screen, yep, you can see that the low FPS does show when I switch the screen around, when I rotate around. Yep, so a little bit of a lower FPS there, but while you're shooting, it is decently playable. So I would say that even on this low-end build, Helldivers 2 is playable, just that you shouldn't expect a 60 FPS experience. We are expecting about 45 FPS, but it is still playable for Helldivers 2. Okay, so that's about it. So this has been a build vlog and benchmark results of my low-end build. So my low-end build costs, like I mentioned, what's the build cost again? About 560 Sing dollars. So it works out to be about 560 SGD. This is a low-end build. Maybe I'll just put it in a corner. But you can actually play some of the modern games decently well, especially if you're building a low-end system. I expect the gamers to most likely play more free-to-play games, like I would say like Marvel Rivals, probably Overwatch 2, games like Counter-Strike 2, Valorant, all those free-to-play games, because since you really don't have much of a budget to spend on your gaming PC, you also probably don't have much of a budget to buy games as well. So the games that I benchmark, most of them are free-to-play games. I benchmark a series of games. You can actually scroll through earlier. Some games like Valorant, Path of Exile 2 is not really free-to-play. Dota 2, Apex, right? Marvel Rivals. All the free-to-play games run decently. Some at a lower frame rate than others, especially games like Marvel Rivals. But other games, even like single-player games like Power, modern games like Helldivers 2, there's on the Unreal Engine 5, Path of Exile 2, which is also a little bit more demanding. They are still able to run at close to 60 FPS, so it is still rather playable. So if you are with a low budget and you want to build cheap gaming system, this is the kind of gaming system that I would recommend. But otherwise, it will also be good to look for similarly spec'd gaming PCs on Carousell, because as I was trying to sell this at $500, I will find that I was grossly still overpriced, because there are a lot of cheaper builds that are selling for about 450 to sometimes even 350 SGD on Carousell. Some of them have even better specs than I do, But the only downside is that they don't have as big of a NVMe SSD. A lot of these cheap builds are selling on Carousell. There are with like 256 gigabyte SSDs or like 512 gigabyte SSDs. I've seen none of them that actually include a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. So if you're building one entirely brand new for yourself with a used 1660 Super, try to get that 1 terabyte NVMe SSD because the SSD is a big requirement. So it's not too expensive, only at $76. Okay, so I've ranted on for quite a long while, and if you're still watching to the end, thank you very much. Please subscribe if you find this video entertaining or useful, and we'll see you guys in the next video.